Alright, so welcome back to part 3 and the final part of this mini Seiko collection. In the previous two videos, I've mentioned my journey in acquiring these two vintage Seikos. So in this video, I'm going to be mainly focusing on finding like a fitting conclusion to this 3-watch collection. As you can see, the Credor would be the answer, and I've already done like a full review on this channel. So if you're wanting more information on this specific watch, you can go check that out. First thing I want to mention is that this mini collection and its theme is just really me trying to grasp at some connection amongst these 3 watches. First and foremost is that I got these watches because I truly like them, and finding a theme or connection among them is just kind of helps me justify the purchase, especially with the Credor. Like if I didn't like the Credor, I'm sure I can find reasons why a different watch would be a better fit. It's kind of like the lie that we watch collectors tell ourselves when we consider every big purchase, I guess. So with that out of the way, looking at the two vintage ones, the Lord Matic and the King Seiko, obviously I went looking for the next tier in the ladder, Grand Seiko. And as mentioned in the previous video, these two kind of neatly exemplified Seiko's best in the pre-Quartz revolution, with the caliber 56 in here from Suwa and the caliber 52 from Daini. So this led me to decide on chasing down a spring drive Grand Seiko as my final piece, kind of like bookending the beginning of the Quartz revolution and then the beginning of the Quartz evolution. And in keeping with my collective theme, I started looking at non-circular shaped Grand Seikos. And among the 3 lineages, I think Grand Seiko probably has the best historical record keeping due to its large fan base and horological significance. And it wasn't too difficult to literally find every single spring drive Grand Seiko ever made. I think as of August 2022, there is 286 models according to +9 time. And to my disappointment, modern Grand Seiko decided not to make any, they only made circular watches. So I was kind of at a loss. I didn't really want to compromise my theme, collection theme. And so I decided to just wait. I wasn't in a rush. I thought, one day Grand Seiko would eventually make a non-circular shaped case. I mean, they've done it before during the vintage era. Some time goes by, I was still kind of researching on spring drive movement, kind of learning about it, and I realized something. So I started to wonder why square shaped or rectangular shaped case, even during the vintage era, they didn't really exist until caliber 56 and caliber 52 movements. I'm sure that shape was popular during that era, but the shape isn't new. If you look at Cartier Tank or Cartier Santos, it's not a new shape. And then I thought about it, and I think I found one possible reason why the square rectangular shape didn't exist until caliber 56. And it was because of how small these two movements are. It was one of the pillars in constructing these two calibers to make it compact and thin. So with a large movement, if you had a large movement and you also needed to make it into a square or rectangular shape, the case still needs to accommodate the diameter of the movement, And if it's large, then the outer case will have to like extend the corners of a circle. So suddenly it made the watch wear very large. Like I made a video dedicating to this idea in calculating how a watch wears in relation to surface area, because a square 35 millimeter watch wears much larger than a circular 35 millimeter. So the larger size probably wasn't going to sell well during that era, and that's why they only made this shape once they were able to miniaturize the movement down to a more compact size. So with that in mind, like when I look at spring drive movement watches, I realized one of the main complaint is it was either too big or too thick. Like that was the main complaint. And when you look at modern day Grand Seiko's female catalog, spring drive does not exist. So for like a smaller watch. And also I'll add in a picture with like the new 9RA2 movement. As you can see, one of the selling point was they decided to make it more thin, 5.1 millimeter, but as a consequence, the size of the movement was also increased. So if you look compared to the old 9R15 or 9R65, so it's thinner by 0.1 millimeter, but then as you can see, the diameter went from a 30 millimeter to a 34 millimeter. So Grand Seiko was making things thinner, but they were not making it smaller. So that was kind of something I noticed. Just as a side note, I know when you read about the 9RA2 on the official site, they said that they were able to reduce the thickness by 0.8 millimeter. I don't know like how to verify this, but if you look back in the old press release for the 9R65 movement, everything talks about that movement being 5.1 millimeter. And it's not until I found an article way back in Japan stating that the 9R66 movement was indeed 5.8 millimeter. It was a GMT model. So when the new caliber 9RA2 came out saying that it was able to reduce by 0.8, they may be kind of playing around with semantics and saying that actually it was 0.8 from the GMT model. So I'm not sure, but that's something I just wanted to make a note of. So I realized that it may be a very long time for Grand Seiko to make a square or rectangular watch, because to like miniaturize a spring drive down in size while still keeping Grand Seiko's standard in robustness, reliability, and accuracy, it's probably not a small feat. I mean, at that point, I basically put this 3 watch collection on pause. Like, I basically have to wait for spring drive technology to eventually evolve, perhaps after decades of iteration. Alright, then one day, just still learning about spring drive, I realized like the first spring drive watches were not actually Grand Seiko, but rather a regular Seiko and a Credor. So then I basically immediately started cataloging every spring drive watch outside of the GS moniker. I'll add in a picture. Basically, I looked into, Seiko Presage, Seiko Prospex, a regular Seiko, Seiko Galant, Izul, Ananta, and finally Credor. I looked at every single one of these line, looking at non-circular watch. One thing to note is that when your eyes are just only looking for a non-circular watch, your eyes gets very good at picking out distinct shapes very quickly as you browse. So for this Credor, as I was browsing, like I immediately felt something was different. I was flying through the catalogs, and as I looked closer, I finally found out that this was what I was looking for: a non-circular shaped spring drive watch. This is the octagonal shape. Initially I wasn't too sure about it because the crystal was still circular, and because these two vintage pieces were truly shaped in their design, like crystal and outer case, I wasn't too sure if I should keep waiting for a different variant to eventually come out. But knowing how big the spring drive movements are and its limitation, I made my peace. I mean, my Citizen cushion shape watch also had a circular crystal with a cushion shape outside. So, I needed to expand my restrictions a bit. I was still pretty happy that I was able to maintain this shaped watch collection theme. So the next part I needed to kind of internalize is am I okay to break the tier in climbing from Lord to King and then to Grand Seiko? Like, who is this Credor kid anyways, right? I didn't really know much. So I did my research on the brand. I realized it's a pretty interesting brand. Admittedly, it's not as horologically rich as Grand Seiko, but nevertheless, it's a brand I could get behind. I think Credor is a brand that thrived during the Quartz revolution, and it always kind of aimed to be Seiko's finest work within the Japanese domestic market. In my review of this watch in particular, I did mention how I believe Daini was the spearhead of the Credor brand. So yeah, I showed this picture a few times. Like, basically, if you look at all the earliest Credors, I think Daini was heavily involved or played a significant role. So as many know, the two factories, Daini and Suwa, they eventually evolved. Daini became SII, Seiko Instrument Inc., and Suwa became Seiko Epson Corp. And the Epson division were the people that brought spring drive to the market. And even to this day, they are the manufacturer of the 9R calibers. SII Daini went the other route because they didn't have spring drive, so they kept refining the mechanical or automatic aspect. And modern day, they are the people who are responsible for the 9S high beat movement for Grand Seiko. So, in my own off-beaten path of justification, I basically thought to myself, a Credor with a spring drive movement would be the perfect marriage and culmination in Daini and Suwa's journey post-Quartz revolution. Like I said, this is the mind of a watch collector when you truly want to justify your purchase. Alright, the rest you probably already know if you watch my Credor review. I go into details on why I picked this specific model, and I talked about the final push in purchasing this piece. One thing I didn't mention is that why I insisted I want to get a watch on a bracelet. So when you look at this 3 watch collection, I still wanted to keep like the classic 3 watch format, being work, play, and formal. So like this subdued Lordmatic was to be the formal dress watch, which was my intention from the beginning. This flashy full yellow gold King Seiko ended up being my weekend playful watch, and so I wanted a everyday office work watch. So the bracelet became an important factor. Of course, it's not perfect because this watch only has 30-meter water resistance, so I can't have everything, I guess. Alright, so with all that, this is the completion in this mini Seiko collection. Will there be any change? I can't say never. Like if Grand Seiko ever does make a shape other than round, then I would need to ponder upon that. Also, for this Lordmatic, there is an option to like try to upgrade this to Grand Seiko itself, as long as it's from Sua, because I still want to keep the Sua Daini theme there. Looking through the catalog, I only found 2 real options. Oh, also a side note, there is a rectangular shaped Grand Seiko from the ladies collection, the Grand Seiko 194A3000 VFA. It looks very beautiful and stunning, but unfortunately it's like a unicorn, and it's also made by Daini, so I didn't really consider it. For the 2 Sua options, they both only exist in the 56 lineage. It was the 5645-5000 or the 5646-5010. Of the 2, like this OG snowflake gold case, this is like a unicorn also, and it's insanely expensive when they do come up in auction. So basically it's only down to this one option, 5646-5010. And for some reason this design, just compared to this one, it just didn't really speak to me. I'm not the biggest fan. Maybe one day when I'm in Japan, I'm able to try it on the wrist, then I'll maybe reconsider it. So yeah, this is a conclusion. If you watched all 3 videos to completion, then thank you, and also I'm sorry that you had to watch all that. I hope you all learned something interesting about Sua and Daini commitment in doing one's best. Remember, it's okay to talk yourself into buying something you truly like as long as the reason is thoughtful and meaningful to yourself. It's good. Like, I can tell you from my experience that when you do reflect back on your watch collection, the journey is always the most memorable. I mean, this video is probably proof of that. Alright, so cherish in the search and happy hunting. See you.